We begin our story with a beautiful young woman holding the hands of a girl named Elaine, telling the child that she will return with her father soon. Kneeling down to the girl's height, she asks her to be a good girl and wait until she comes back. Then Elaine replies, "Yes, ma'am." However, an hour passed, then two, and Elaine kept waiting and waiting, but her stepmother never returned. And with that, she was left alone in this world. Then we move 1 year into the future and see 9-year-old Elaine observing some little breads in front of a bakery. A kind lady appears and asks if she would like a bread roll. Elaine replies that she wouldn't, and that she was only looking, because she also doesn't have money to pay for them. The protagonist says she picked some strawberries from the forest earlier and is quite fine, and when she has her own money, she will come back to buy bread. With that, watching the movement around them, she says it's all right. However, she hands Elaine a bag of breads, saying these are leftovers from yesterday, so it's no problem if she takes them. She also advises her not to wander around the forest because there are rumors of monsters there. Full of tenderness, she holds Elaine's shoulders and tells her to always visit if she ever feels hungry. Our protagonist understands the advice given by the lady and is very grateful for the breads. Elaine holds one of the bread rolls and thinks that tonight she will be able to sleep with a full stomach. She reflects that the bakery lady doesn't want others to see her walking around the shops because of the state Elaine is in herself. But despite all that, things are better than they were that day. That day was the lowest point of her life. A year ago, Elaine's stepmother abandoned her, and the only thing she could do was remain helpless on the roadside. She didn't even have money to get a carriage to return home, and people did nothing to help her. She was attacked by cold and hunger. She even suffered attacks from stronger street boys as well. To make things worse than they already were, even strangers began treating her with great cruelty for no reason at all. At that moment, Elaine was clinging to anything she could find in her path. Then she finds what appears to be the place where the town's news is posted. The protagonist has a slight hope that there might be some information about her on that bulletin board. Elaine knows that her stepmother wouldn't miss her, but her father probably would. Not even the death of her mother changes the fact that she is still her father's daughter. She feels that, to her father, she is still part of the family. Thus, Elaine goes to the news board and carefully searches for any announcement from the Crustacea family. But surprisingly, the notice she reads is that the Crustacea family is in need of workers for the celebration party of the birth of the family's first child. These people are real pieces of work, to not say something worse. The announcement was clearly a shock to her, but it served for the protagonist to finally give up hope and dedicate herself to living on the streets. I already feel like taking Elaine and keeping her in a little jar. Elaine begins to reflect on how greedy her stepmother is for getting rid of her, so she won't have even a drop of the fortune meant for her son. She starts imagining whether, in the future, if she had someone she wanted to protect at all costs, she would act the same way her stepmother did. Soon, the protagonist finds a blanket and a box, making her eyes sparkle. These simple objects seem magical in Elaine's eyes, and she notices they appear to have been abandoned. Happy, Elaine imagines she will be able to sleep with a real blanket tonight. Elaine thinks today is a lucky day because she found bread in a blanket. However, at that same moment, we see a hostile red-haired man approaching from behind her. She feels a strange presence, but she is grabbed before she can attempt anything. The scene cuts and our protagonist finds herself in the middle of a forest, coughing and fallen beside a tree. A threatening voice orders her to get out from where she is, but she says it's better for Elaine to stay away when other people are around. The same red-haired man from earlier exclaims that she can't just bite his hand and run away, and that he will teach her a lesson when he finds her. Then Elaine understands a bit of the delicate situation she is in while the man keeps shouting for her to come out. Observing the aggressor more clearly, she sees that now he is holding a knife. Our protagonist knows that if that man finds her, for sure he will kill her. Soon, she curls up completely and doesn't understand why all of this is happening to her. The only thing poor Elaine wanted was a good place to sleep. She places her hand on the ground and wonders how long she will have to keep suffering like this. However, bringing her hands to her face, she decides it is not the time to sit around lamenting. At the moment, what she needs to do is find a way to get out of there. Then Elaine realizes things have quieted down, and that now is the perfect chance for her, because even if he is close, it will be difficult for him to see her in the darkness. She thinks that if she's careful, she will make it. But at the same instant, she hears and notices something strange behind the tree. The protagonist simply sees a kind of werewolf feeding. The monster stares at the protagonist, and she possibly remembers the stories about the monster in the forest. With that, immediately, Elaine instinctively realizes she has no way to escape anymore. Kneeling and with no hope, Elaine thinks she went through every kind of suffering only to end up becoming a monster's dinner. She laughs as she faces the tragic fate she is about to suffer, and she only wishes that in the next life, she is born into a family that truly loves her. But the moment the monster leaps to attack Elaine, we see someone holding a magical glow at their fingertips. Suddenly, a black-haired woman appears, conjuring a spell, and saves Elaine from being devoured. Impressed, Elaine watches the huge wolf being consumed by magical flames before her eyes until it becomes nothing but ashes. After that, the woman asks if Elaine is all right, and the protagonist turns to her. With tears lightly falling from her eyes, Elaine thinks that with a simple wave of her hand, this woman named Bella reduced a monster of that size to a mere pile of ashes. Finally saved, the protagonist begins to lose consciousness. Bella approaches her, and that was how the first meeting between the two happened. Time passes, and the sun shines through the window of the room where our protagonist lies. Distressed, Elaine begins to have several nightmare visions while resting. First, she sees the figure of a woman saying, Elaine's very existence is repugnant. She also recalls the memory of the man who tried to attack her the previous night. Even the dark figure of the wolf-shaped monster appears to terrorize her. Desperate, Elaine finds herself face to face with the evil figure and begs for someone to come and save her. But before the worst could happen, the protagonist wakes up in shock. Still very breathless, she realizes that all of that was just a nightmare. However, she suspects not everything was a dream, because she clearly remembers being in the forest running and encountering that monster. Then she looks around and wonders where she might be. The protagonist observes the window and the furniture and notices the place seems simple but cozy, and it has a familiar, very comforting smell. Soon Elaine hears footsteps and someone saying, "She must have seen it, right?" Another answers, "I suppose so." And our protagonist notices people approaching. Opening the bedroom door, two people come closer and one of them seems very much like Bella. Elaine pretends she is asleep and swallows hard, a bit suspicious and scared, wondering who these people are approaching. The man accompanying Bella comments that she used her powers right in front of the girl, so it would be difficult not to notice them. Bella, with complete sincerity, answers that she couldn't just stand still and watch the girl be attacked by a monster. Wringing out a wet cloth and very spontaneous, she admits even she was caught off guard by the creature's presence. The man questions what she intends to do with the child, and Bella says she still doesn't know and will decide when the girl wakes up. But the man doesn't like the answer at all because the girl saw her using magic, and he reminds Bella that she knows very well what happens when someone witnesses her powers. Bella snaps back at the man for calling the girl that because she is not an object or an animal, but a person, a girl, and she reiterates that not all humans are bad. Uncomfortable, the man heads toward the door to leave and makes it clear that he will never accept the presence of a human child in that house. Never. However, Bella doesn't care about the provocation and even mocks him, telling the white-haired man to close the door carefully so he won't wake the girl. She gets closer to Elaine and places the wet cloth on her face, saying that this way her fever will get a little better. Soon she lifts the cloth and looks at the protagonist. Smiling, Bella notices that the girl is already healed and asks how she is feeling. She brings her hand to her face and Bella asks if she still feels pain anywhere even though the fever has passed. Elaine only stares at her, and Bella looks back with a warm smile. Analyzing the situation, Elaine notices that those blue flames in the forest can only mean that Bella is a folkloric being that has existed even before the Kingdom of Phylon was founded. In other words, Bella is a witch. Thus, Elaine directly asks Bella if she is really a witch. Surprised, Bella says that Elaine understands things quite quickly. Next, she answers that, yes, she is what humans call a witch. But the protagonist ends up asking a question that leaves Bella very surprised. "And you? What do you call yourself?" The witch confesses that no one had ever asked her a question like that before. Then Elaine apologizes, saying she did not mean to offend her. Regaining her composure, the woman only says she was surprised and tells her name is Bella, then asks the protagonist's name in return. Our protagonist simply answers, "Elaine." After that, Bella asks if Elaine has any home she can return to. Elaine says in a sad and dry tone that she has nowhere to go. Then, gently, Bella holds one of Elaine's hands and asks if she would like to stay there with them. The protagonist's eyes shine again at the idea of having a home once more. She knows Bella could end up being a bad person, but she feels happy anyway. The scene cuts, and the protagonist looks at her reflection in the water and notices her eyes are swollen. And so, by Bella's order, Elaine began living there. She accepted the offer with deep gratitude because she had no other place to return to. However, one thing continues to disturb her. Then, we see the two talking again in the room, and Elaine comments that she feels Bella's husband seems not to like her, and that she should have spoken to him before letting her live there. But Bella replies that he is just a friend and not her husband. However, the witch says there is something about him that Elaine needs to know. The protagonist asks what it would be. Thus, Bella reveals that her friend named Esful is a demon. Back at the lakeside, we see the protagonist reflecting that they say the hatred of demons for humans is in their blood, and she wonders if that is why Esful hates her. Suddenly, she stumbles over a small stone in her path. She is certain she will fall, but she is unexpectedly caught by Esful, and she wonders if he saved her. Esfel gently sets the protagonist back on the ground, and she thanks him with a bit of hesitation. The demon stares at Elaine for a moment, but then moves away without saying a word, while the protagonist runs after him, asking him to wait a moment. "Your name is Esfel, right?" she asks. Turning to the protagonist, Esfel comments that it seems Bella told her about him. Elaine is surprised that he addressed her, and replies that yes, she did. Then he says Elaine must know he is against her presence there. The protagonist also says she knows. With that, Esfel says directly that she is not welcome there in that place and must leave immediately. Without being shaken, Elaine asks if he is saying that just because she is human, and that leaves him intrigued. Esfel says he suspected Bella had failed to tell the whole story. More calmly, he explains that in the past he truly hated humans, but after spending time with Bella, that repulsion toward humans slowly faded. Elaine then thinks he is right, because he wouldn't have saved her from falling if he still had complete disdain for human beings. But if it isn't demon instincts that make him hate humans, she thinks, then what is it? What did Bella fail to tell her? Thus, she asks the real reason he doesn't like her. The demon throws the question back, asking whether Elaine doesn't find it strange that Bella was so affectionate with her, even though she had never seen her before. It's not easy to tell a complete stranger to become part of a family. Crossing his arms, Esfel says he believes the reason behind that connection between Bella and humans is that she has been growing very lonely over the years. Knowing this, Elaine is not the first person for whom Bella has developed sympathy, and she won't be the last. Esfel admits that some were better than others. Therefore, most of the time humans ended up betraying Bella's trust in the end. Saddened, Elaine asks what he means by that and how they betrayed her. He begins to tell that Bella had already coughed blood from drinking poisoned wine given to her by someone she trusted, or when she was struck while sleeping by another person to whom she had opened her home and her heart. Elaine cannot understand how someone could do something so terrible to a person as good as Bella. Esfel answers that they do it simply for eternal life. He explains that they believed drinking the blood of a witch would grant them eternal life. Outraged, he says that a mere superstition is enough to fill the minds of the ungrateful with murderous thoughts, even after everything Bella did for them. And not satisfied with so much suffering, says Esfel, she still brought another human home, you. Then, after revealing his true motives, Esfel says that is why he cannot accept Elaine's presence there, because he doesn't want to see Bella suffer anymore. And Elaine understands that it is better for her to leave and not return. With her eyes lowered, the protagonist understands that the demon did not feel hatred, but was only trying to protect Bella in the way he could. She thinks she should leave, but she cannot force herself to do that. She soon apologizes to the witch's friend. However, she firmly says she wants to stay with Bella. Esfel, with his fingers on his forehead showing indignation, comments that she is just another greedy human. Elaine replies that maybe she is greedy, but Bella is the only person who helped her when she needed it most, and no one cared for her the way Bella did, not even Elaine's own family. That sentence makes Esfel question this. Smiling with great tenderness, the protagonist adds that Bella is the first person who made her feel loved, even though they share no blood relation and have known each other for only a short time. Elaine continues, saying that Bella saved her life, treated her wounds, and smiled at her in a way that melted her heart. Even mine melted here. I want to stay by her side and make sure she never loses that smile. Behind the tree, Bella was listening to all of this and was moved by Elaine's words. With her eyes full of tears, Esfel looks toward the tree, noticing something is strange there. Thus, the demon decides they will discuss her staying another day. But he also says the protagonist should already know that when Bella has an idea in mind, nothing can change it. However, Elaine must remember one thing. The moment he notices Elaine showing the slightest sign of threat to Bella, I will destroy you. Esfel threatens as he crushes a small leaf. He shows the crushed leaf, and without feeling intimidated, the protagonist replies that they have a deal. Even the demon looks at Elaine and comments that she is quite a strange little creature, very cheerful. Our protagonist smiles and asks if he really thinks so. At that moment, Bella comes out from behind the hiding spot and asks, since when the two of them became such good friends, because she is starting to feel left out. She smiles like Elaine and asks what the two were talking about. The protagonist runs to hug her and says that Esfel allowed her to live with Bella, and the witch answers that she didn't even need his permission for that, but she is happy he said so. At that moment, the three of them became a true family. After all of that, time passed and Bella began to teach Elaine how to use a sword. And from Bella's own comments, the protagonist had quite a knack for it. That life was so good that they even traveled throughout the continent. However, in the 5th year the protagonist was living with Bella, a new person entered their lives. The name of this man was Lloyd of Philon, and he was the crown prince of the kingdom of Philon. In little time, Lloyd and Bella ended up falling in love. Soon a beautiful and healthy son of the couple came into the world. His name is Rhys of Philon, Rhi for those closest to him. The protagonist, enchanted, asks to touch his tiny hand. Bella allows it, and with her finger in the baby's small hand, Elaine greets him with great tenderness. From then on, every day was a flood of joy, and Elaine's wish was that this happiness would never end. But unfortunately, nothing lasts forever. We move forward a few years in the kingdom of Phelan and see Bella saying that Rhee's birthday is approaching, and she asks Lloyd if he has already thought of a present to give him, smiling. Lloyd replies that he has already made all preparations for the party. The Bella doesn't like the surprise very much, and says that Lloyd should have told her because she also wanted to plan the party together with him. Lloyd apologizes, a little embarrassed. Trying to justify himself, he explains that he also wanted the party to be a surprise for Bella herself. Bella pouts upon hearing that. Then the prince notices Bella's necklace and realizes he has never seen it before. He asks where she bought it. Holding the necklace, Bella replies that His Majesty gave it to her as thanks for taking good care of Rhys. Lloyd stares at it with suspicion and says he understands. Bella notices his strange reaction and asks what is wrong, and if the necklace looks strange on her. Lloyd quickly says it looks beautiful on her. He only says he was surprised that his father would give her something like that as a gift. Right then, the butler calls the prince for a cabinet meeting. Lloyd jokes that it is now time for him to be busy. Bella says goodbye and tells him she will be in her room with Rhee. The prince says he will return soon so the three of them can have lunch together. Bella smiles and says she will be waiting. Soon after, the scene shifts to a forge filled with overwhelming heat. Astonished, the blacksmith asks how the young woman managed to bring him such a rare material he has never seen anyone carry a salve before. The young woman, Elaine, now 20 years old, replies that it took her a long time to find it. She adds that despite the difficulty, she would do anything for Rhee. Resting his hammer on his shoulder, the blacksmith says he heard that Prince Rhys is about to turn 3 years old, and he is surprised by how fast time is passing. He assures her he will do his best, and that it will be great fun forging with such a material. Elaine is excited to see the result. She then asks how long it will take for the work to be completed. The blacksmith replies that it will take about a month. Elaine thinks it might be finished right at the last minute, but she says she understands and she will return later. The man asks if she is going back to the capital. Elaine confirms it, explaining that she has been hunting salves for 10 days and 10 nights, and it is more than time for her to return. They bid farewell, and Elaine says she will be back in a month. On the way back to the capital, the protagonist thinks of Rhee and imagines how excited he will be with the gift. We then return briefly to Elaine's memories, seeing Rhys confused about what he heard regarding his birthday present. Full of joy, Elaine says she wants to give a special birthday present to her special little boy. Looking at a book, Rhys thinks about the proposal and unexpectedly points to the sword leaning against the sofa. The little prince firmly says he wants that Elaine strokes his hair and asks if he really wants the sword. Rhys nods, but Elaine says she cannot give him a sword at the moment, so he will have to wait a little longer. Rhys accepts it, smiles, and says Elaine is the best. That reaction alone is enough to make Elaine's heart pound. Hands on her chest and completely smitten, she hopes the gift will be finished soon. The focus returns to Bella, who is feeding her child and begins to suspect something is wrong, because it is not normal for Lloyd to be late. At that moment, someone knocks on the door asking for permission to enter, and Bella grants it. A maid enters carefully. The first thing Bella asks is if Lloyd has returned from the meeting. The maid says that when she went to the cabinet chamber, the place was completely empty. She had asked another maid where the ministers had gone. That servant said she saw everyone who attended the cabinet meeting heading toward the altar building. Prince Lloyd went with them. Puzzled, Bella finds it strange that everyone would go to the altar building, since that place is only used for annual events. Still, she tells the maid she understands and asks her to watch over Rhee. Rhys asks his mother where she is going. Running her hand through his hair, Bella tells him not to worry because she is only going to look for his father, and she will be back soon. However, as she walks through the castle, Bella begins to feel a very strange aura. One, getting worse as she approaches the altar building, until she is shocked to see a mysterious room open. The princess does not understand why this strange energy is emanating from a room that should be off limits. Step by step, Bella feels herself getting closer to the source of the evil energy. Soon she freezes and is extremely shaken by what she encounters. The scene she and we see is of a macabre ritual, and Bella cannot understand what the hell is happening there. Observing that terrible scene, Bella wonders why a room like that exists in the castle. Shocked, she also questions who these people in front of her are and what they are doing. Soon she recognizes that the victim of this sacrifice is her own husband, Lloyd. Elsewhere, Elaine, while riding, notices that the crows are noisier than usual today and wonders what might be going wrong. The protagonist feels she needs to hurry. Without even thinking about the consequences and stepping on an evil magic circle, Bella advances toward the altar seeking Lloyd. Bella does not want to believe, under any circumstances, that this is happening. She sheds tears and trembles as she watches her beloved on the altar. Touching him with tragic affection, she asks what is happening in that place. She embraces him and begs him to stop fooling around and get up, until a voice calls her a poor creature, and Bella immediately turns to identify who said it. The one responsible was the king himself, holding a heart in his hands and staring at Bella with malice. Then the witch realizes that it is Lloyd's own heart that his majesty is holding still in tears. Bella indignantly questions what the king has just done. She exclaims that he killed his own son, while he only smiles in a wicked way. However, at that very moment, the king snaps his fingers and something happens to Bella. She brings her hands to her head and wonders what is happening, for she is feeling something very strange. Extremely distressed, she feels there is a voice in her head. The voice says, "Here are those who removed my eyes and my stomach, and also took my heart." And with that phrase, a kind of magical eye activates on Bella's necklace and begins to shine. Soon the witch notices this, and the necklace also begins to move as if being drawn toward a greater force. The moment this happens, Bella remembers that she read about what this necklace is and knows what it means. It is a magical artifact that unleashes a powerful curse when blood is offered, called the Eye of the Demonic Dragon. Knowing this, Bella tries to get rid of the necklace, but the king says none of that will work, because from the moment the curse is activated, he says the necklace can no longer be removed. Now, all her movements are under the king's control. Then His Majesty adds that the magic became even stronger because of Lloyd's sacrifice. He approaches Bella and warns the witch not to attempt anything foolish, mocking her by asking whether she doesn't want Lloyd's death to have been in vain. Filled with rage and sorrow, Bella stares the king straight in the eyes and calls him a bastard. But the witch's agony returns, and the voices intensify, ordering her to kill. With her eyes beginning to darken, Bella realizes that the cursed necklace is destroying her mind. Meanwhile, while riding, Elaine seems to sense something very strange in the air. The protagonist questions what just happened, as she felt a shiver run down her entire spine. She quickly turns her attention back to the capital and wonders about that blue light that appeared in the distance. Besides the brightness, Elaine hears some voices coming from the same direction. Shocked, she stops and observes the chaos happening in the city, with people fleeing and others already dead on the ground. Filled with horror, she asks what the hell is going on in that place. Then Elaine touches the blue flames and notices that these are the same flames Bella uses. Thus, she increases the speed of her gallop and again wonders what is happening there. Our protagonist cannot understand why Bella's flames are everywhere, until, reaching the center of the destruction, she slows the horse, looks around, and shouts for Bella, asking where she is. However, an explosion occurs seconds later, and Elaine watches with her eyes slightly affected by the brightness. Then, with the smoke lower, we see Bella positioned in the middle of the flames. Elaine notices her companion, but the witch's eyes are black and her expression is cold. And after also noticing Elaine's presence, the cursed one charges toward the protagonist and strikes her with extreme speed. But the swordswoman reacts better and manages to defend herself. In a difficult position, Elaine wonders why Bella is attacking her. The witch's eyes and the cursed necklace glow as Elaine tries to understand what happened to her beloved benefactor. Our protagonist looks at Bella and exclaims, "Bella, it's me, Elaine." However, the witch is out of her senses, ignores her words, and hits the swordswoman with a blow that sends her flying. Elaine crashes with great force into a stone structure and is badly wounded. Hurt and breathless, the warrior notices that Bella seems to hear nothing. She says, unfortunately, her companion is completely out of control. Then, staggering, the protagonist watches Bella and reflects on what she should do now. I need to hurry. Time is not on my side, Elaine thinks. She is very strong. I need to find a way to end this before... At that exact moment, Bella appears in front of Elaine and strikes a blow with all her strength at the protagonist. However, in the middle of the attack, the swordswoman manages to catch sight of Bella's cursed necklace. After that, she performs a maneuver and repositions herself. Turning her attention back to Bella, she thinks she had never seen her wearing that necklace before. Thus, she imagines the necklace must have something to do with her friend's sudden change in behavior. And leaping toward the witch, she knows there is only one way to find out. Noticing the attack, Bella summons her blue flames and Elaine descends in an offensive stance. Extremely fast, the protagonist lands and appears in front of her friend to reach for the necklace. She manages to grab the necklace but is fatally struck by the witch's claws. With a faint voice, she calls out to Bella, and the witch slowly begins to regain consciousness. The black-haired woman fully recovers her senses, but our protagonist falls to her knees. Mortally wounded Bella, overcome with terror, questions what she has just done, and tragically, Elaine collapses to the ground. Unable to do anything else, her gaze empty. She sees the woman she loved most in her life as her vision darkens, thinks this is how she will die, and tears stream down her face. In her final moment, she managed to free her friend from the curse, but still feels guilty, for she should have arrived sooner. Then, on the 31st of January in the year 512 of the Phylon calendar, Sebeka, the capital of the kingdom, fell at the hands of a single witch. However, we see the protagonist in a vast void, and she asks herself where she is. Confused, she wonders if she is dead, but suddenly she starts screaming for Bella, begging her not to do what she is about to do, and lets out one final cry calling her friend's name. Thus, the protagonist awakens amid the ruins of the city and hears Bella's voice apologizing. We return to her memories, and the witch comes very close to Elaine, taking responsibility for everything that happened. Bella says she cannot go back in time to save all the lives she took, but she can at least save hers by giving her own heart to her friend. Our protagonist does not want Bella to do that, because her companion will end up losing her life. Ignoring Elaine's warning, the witch says she has only one request, that she take care of Prince Reese for her. Then all of this fades, and the swordswoman fully regains consciousness and asks where she is. The warrior does not know how she is still alive because she remembers Bella literally breaking her heart. Then, frozen, she notices the wound on her chest has healed. Thus, in that instant, she remembers the image of Bella saying she would give her own heart to her. Then she experiences the tragic realization that her friend loved her until the end and literally gave her heart. It was so beautiful. I am crying my eyes out here. She sheds tears, wonders why Bella did that, and collapses in sobs. The protagonist cannot understand at all why this happened, for Bella was the kindest person in the world and would not hurt a fly. However, she remembers the necklace she destroyed in the battle, and the moment she crushed the object, Bella became herself again. Elaine was certain that Bella would never attack anyone of her own will, and she soon recalls the magical markings that were on the necklace. They had the same energy as the place where she had found Bella. After that, she takes a piece of paper and bites her thumb until it bleeds a little. With quick movements, she tries to remember the design of the necklace's marking, but she recalls only the brief shape of the eye in the center. As she sketches, she reflects that she does not know who or what did this to Bella, but she will certainly find them, and I will make them pay for it. Then Elaine's curiosity only grows. She thinks that if it were someone who wanted Bella's blood for immortality, they would have simply ended her and not made her lose control and destroy everything. Our protagonist finds herself walking for a long time, but finds not a single sign of houses among the leaves of the plants. She wonders what might have happened to Esfel, Lloyd, and Reese, for there was no sign of anyone near the castle. She remembers that the palace itself had become ruins. However, her thoughts are interrupted by the presence of monsters just ahead in the field of leaves. She sneaks through the thicket and feels that something is not right there, because there should not be so many monsters near Sebeka. This type of creature is born from calamity, but it cannot reproduce that quickly. Elaine thinks she must make as little noise as possible. However, at that exact moment, a flying monster appears right above the warrior. She looks up and already knows she has been seen by the abominations. Thus, the protagonist faces the monsters and abandons the plan to stay silent. Full of determination, she charges forward and eliminates the monsters one by one. The swordswoman feels her body lighter, and most importantly, her mana does not decrease as she fights. Our protagonist knows she is different from her usual self, because normally sword techniques consume a lot of mana, so she wonders why this is happening. With that, we return to Elaine's memories, and she, tired, asks Bella why it feels like she has infinite mana. Bella asks why the apprentice is asking that, and the girl answers that the witch had been training with her all day and she shows no sign of exhaustion. Thoughtful, the master explains that it is not that her mana is infinite, but it never decreases, which only makes Elaine more curious. Bella soon explains that this happens because she is a witch, and witches are made from a combination of human emotions and mana. A witch's heart is created when the human desire for eternal life and beauty merges with mana, and that is why witches live forever, because they carry that union within them and also have a stronger connection to mana. Remembering Bella's words, the protagonist now understands why her mana seems not to diminish. She reflects that she must have received Bella's witch powers because of her heart. Then she continues striking and defeating the monsters until she finally sees a city in the distance. She quickly thinks she might be able to find some answers in the village. So, entering an establishment, she greets a lady there and receives her welcome. However, Elaine's appearance is so frightening that the woman panics, while the swordswoman asks if she may ask a few questions. Even I would run away if I saw a woman like that entering my shop. With that, the lady, still terrified, questions what is happening, and Elaine asks what the date is. Stuttering, the cook answers that it is the 5th of February, making the protagonist imagine she slept for 5 days straight. Thus, she asks what happened to the survivors of Sebeka, and whether some of them are in this village. But the woman does not even know what Elaine is talking about. Our protagonist tries to explain the situation and asks if by any chance no survivors remained. But the lady still does not understand Elaine's questions, because the Sebeka tragedy happened 20 years ago, the woman says, leaving the protagonist shocked. She cannot believe it has been that long since the incident occurred. Because of this, the cook asks if Elaine is drunk, because it makes no sense for her to be searching for survivors of something that happened 20 years ago. Elaine remains in shock, thinking the year should be 512 of the Philon calendar, not 532. Then we shift to another part of the story and see a young woman collapsed, saying she should have killed the man standing before her. The young man looks at her, but she collapses entirely on the ground, severely wounded. Next to other bodies in the same condition, indignant, the swordsman says that she has destroyed her own existence. Next, another red-haired swordsman asks whether those people sent this assassin as well. On the other side, a woman comments that one would think those people would be tired of sending incompetent individuals to take him down by now. However, the purple-eyed man says that it is fine. For what are 1 or 2 assassins? He asks. I'm already used to it, he adds. And we discover he is Rhys of Philon, Duke of Kiliard and son of the late Crown Prince Lloyd of Philon. After becoming a swordsman at 16 years old, he saved the land of Kiliard from ruin and became known as the Sovereign of Miracles. Rhys is now also the leader of the Filres Knights, a group of elite knights renowned for their battle prowess. But even so, this does not stop him from suffering the hatred of the people for being the son of a witch. Soon, Rhys points the blade at the assassin's neck and says, "She is the only one left." Firmly, he promises he will spare the woman's life if she reveals who is behind all of this. However, the enemy only smiles and says he does not have the thirst for violence she expected. She stares at him and adds that she expected more, considering he has the same eyes as that cursed witch. The red-haired man exclaims how she dares say such a thing, but Rhys stops his friend from doing anything. Still, with a wicked smile on her face, the assassin asks if he knows how many people shed tears of anguish because of what his mother did. She then reveals she is not the only one who wants him dead. Many people want the same. Then she tells the Duke to remember well the words she is saying. The insults the woman hurled at him, calling him the cause of all misery for being the witch's son, still reverberate in his mind, leaving the Duke very serious. Observing the situation, the swordsman's partner says she will send the servants to prepare another meal. But while cleaning his own sword, Rhys says there is no need for that. He throws his glove on the ground, turns his back to his companions, and says he has lost his appetite. After that, we return to Elaine, and she still cannot believe that 20 years have passed. She looks at the horizon and imagines that Rhys was just a child at the time, and there was nothing he could have done. Then she thinks that Lloyd and Esfel probably tried to stop Bella, because they certainly would not have abandoned her in that state. However, since Elaine had to fight the witch alone, she considers that the two ended up dying before she even reached the city. Thus, our protagonist feels that everything she lived for no longer exists, and she wonders what she should do now. She then goes down the inn stairs, and the lady who owns the place asks what Elaine is doing and whether she is having trouble sleeping. Elaine replies that she was just wondering if she could get a bit of water. Immediately, the old lady says she will serve some and asks if Elaine doesn't want anything else, and Elaine says no. But with that, the innkeeper's expression turns to shock, and even the protagonist gets startled. She informs the guest that she will make some soup and asks if the warrior wants any, but Elaine refuses again, saying she is not hungry. However, the woman ignores Elaine's answers and says she will bring her some anyway. The protagonist even tries to stop her, saying she only wants water, but the lady is not listening to anything she says. After the brief argument, the soup is finished, and the cook tells Elaine to eat well, because she looks like she needs to put some food in her belly. That soup looks really good. It even made me hungry here. Sitting down for dinner, the hostess asks if Elaine is a traveler because she doesn't remember seeing her in the region before the protagonist answers that it's something like that. Then the old lady gets excited and says that no one wants to go to that region anymore, ever since the forests around Sebeka became infested with monsters. Knowing this, Elaine understands why she is the only guest at the inn. Upset, the innkeeper reveals that it is very sad to work alone there, and that she really wishes her son would return. Taking the chance, the protagonist asks if she has a son. She smiles and happily confirms that she does, then asks if Elaine has ever heard of the Knights of Filres. Her son joined them a month ago. The protagonist doesn't remember any knight order with that name and asks about them. Jokingly, the innkeeper asks in which cave Elaine has been living, because even people who live in the middle of nowhere have heard of those knights, especially since their commander became none other than the Duke of Kiliard, the infamous son of the witch. Upon hearing that, Elaine slams her spoon into the soup, and the woman, nearly dying of fright, asks why she did that. The protagonist immediately asks if she mentioned the witch's son, and the lady says yes, Duke Rhys of Philon himself. When she hears that, little by little, the protagonist begins to cry upon learning that her beloved Rhys is still alive. The innkeeper asks why Elaine is crying and thinks the swordswoman is the strangest person she has ever met. Suddenly, the guest slams the table and asks where the Duke is now. Confused, the lady replies that he usually stays at his estate in Kiliard. We shift focus and go to the city, where a soldier is dying of sleepiness. Bored, he comments to his friend that nothing interesting happens in the region anymore, but the other argues that a monster nest is right in front of the castle walls and asks whether he isn't worried about that. The black-haired warrior adds that they could be attacked by monsters at any second, and the other says it doesn't matter because the knights will show up and take care of it immediately. The more serious one calls his companion an idiot and reminds him that most of the knights are on another mission somewhere out there, but the carefree one doesn't care, and says the castle is protected by magic and no monster would dare come near them. Until something happens, they feel a shiver, and the excited one asks what that was. He even wonders if they got unlucky for talking about monsters. Then, outraged, he questions how a monster got so close, because he thought the fortress's enchanted walls would easily repel them. The black-haired one panics, shouting that they are all going to die, while the other takes a peek and says they need to report it and ask for... However, he interrupts himself when he realizes it is actually a person near the castle. Thus, both look down and see our dear protagonist. Elaine, light and smiling, asks politely if they could open the gate for her. With that, the swordswoman is taken to the reception hall of the 2nd unit of the Knights Lowell. The lieutenant of the Order of Filrez asks if Elaine really cut through the monster nest just to save time. Without hesitation, Elaine answers that she did exactly that. Immediately incredulous, Lowell asks if she is insane and whether she has any idea what she just said, because one wrong step and she would have ended up in the Ramses Mountains, a place not called the Monster Nest for nothing. Gesturing lightly with her hands, Elaine explains that she had no choice, because it was the only route that would get her to the castle in less than a week. Then Lowell crosses his arms and asks the reason for such urgency. Our protagonist replies that it is because of their admission exam. The deadline for registration closes in 2 days, and if the swordswoman took another route, she would not arrive in time for the exam, she explains. Determined, she exclaims that she must join the Knights of Filrez no matter what. With that, Lowell asks if the warrior defeated all those monsters just to arrive in time for the exam, since that test happens every year. Thus, the protagonist becomes more serious and reflects that she cannot tell the truth because they would never believe she had been asleep for the last 20 years. Besides, she does not know how she will tell Rhys that she is the cause of his mother's death. She quickly decides to make up a story and says she had no money and heard that the knights paid very well. Hearing those words, the lieutenant sighs irritably and says that many fools like Elaine joined the order only for the money, and that kind of people did not even pass the first test or did not last more than a month as knights. But Elaine reveals that this is not the only reason she wants to join the order and states, "I am here because there is someone I need to protect." However, not wanting to expose too much, she says that protecting someone refers to her family. Lowell admits that Elaine has skill. It's not everyone who comes out of the mountains alive, but he warns that she needs to understand this knight order is not like the others. The group is hired to fight in the name of various institutions and houses. They go to places infested with monsters to eliminate those cursed creatures, and they receive considerable amounts of money in exchange for those missions. Thus, he explains that this is why their pay is higher than that of other knights, and he asks if Elaine understands. The protagonist firmly responds that she does. Then the lieutenant says he cannot stop her from taking the test, but he begs her to reconsider her decision. "What will happen to the people you love if you die protecting them?" he asks. He continues, saying he suggests Elaine look for another, safer order, even if they pay less. However, immediately, the woman with the heart of a witch exclaims that she will not die, but will stay alive to protect her family, and she does not want to lose a loved one ever again. Upon hearing the words, "lose someone again," Lowell becomes thoughtful. With that, the lieutenant accepts it, says he did his part, but that this is the girl's funeral. Standing up, he says he will prepare a room for Elaine and that she can take a bath in the meantime. Tomorrow, he will show her where she can register. The protagonist thanks him, and Lowell wishes her a good night. Outside, the soldier knows Elaine is not an ordinary girl and wonders what her true reasons for joining the Knights must be. However, it is also possible that the woman is just lucky. Whether that is the case or not, Lowell says he should report this to the Duke tomorrow. Night falls, and the protagonist rests in the great castle. In her dreams comes the image of past times, when she played with Rhys along with all the people she loved. The little boy holds a lock of her hair, and Elaine asks if he likes her hair that much, and Rhys answers that it is very pretty. Taking advantage of the moment, the protagonist asks which hair he thinks is prettier, hers or his mother's. Without hesitation, little Rhys responds that his mother's is better. Bella finds it adorable, and Esfil tells Elaine not to take it to heart. Then Lloyd appears, and the swordswoman turns to greet him, but the vision the protagonist has is of a wounded and disfigured prince. Startled, Elaine backs away, but soon the ground beneath her begins to crumble. Suddenly, a hooded man appears behind the witch, ready to strike her. Our protagonist screams desperately for her friend to be careful. However, the warning is not enough, and Bella is murdered right in front of her companion. After this nightmare, Elaine wakes in shock and denial. She calls out for the witch, looks at the window, and realizes it was all just a dream. She feels she needs to calm down. The Prince Ree is alive and well. Determined, she promises herself she will never again be that defenseless, but will protect Reese until her final breath. Sometime later, the protagonist goes to the line to register for the knight's exam. The clerk, bored and tired of the job, calls the next person. Then Elaine asks if she can register for the Order of Filres there, and the boy confirms. Soon this superwoman enters the tent with a smile on her face. He was not expecting a girl like Elaine and stammers, asking if she is there to sign up, and the protagonist confirms it. He then hands her the form, which the soldier quickly takes. The protagonist thanks him, and the redhead is already completely smitten. With that, Elaine sighs and hopes deeply that she can find Reese tomorrow. The Duke, on the other hand, is in his estate reflecting as he looks out the window. Someone asks to come in, and he maintains a serious expression. Opening the door carefully, Lowell asks for a moment, saying he needs to report something to his lord. Turning to his subordinate, the prince looks at him and asks what happened. Entering the room, the lieutenant says that 2 days ago someone arrived after crossing the mountains. Reese is impressed and says that few return from that place to tell the tale. Lowell also says he did not believe that story at first, but when he stopped and went to investigate the case himself, surprisingly, he saw a girl covered in dirt. Thus, this girl said she survived purely by luck. But everyone knows no one gets through the mountains with just a bit of luck. Because of this strangeness, the lieutenant even thought the woman was a demon, but soon after, he was certain she was human and the most honest kind. Thoughtful, the Duke asks if the soldier asked the strange woman why she crossed the mountain range, and the warrior says he did, but her answer was even more astonishing. Lowell explains that Elaine said she crossed the hills only to arrive in time for the Order's admission exam, which makes the noble freeze. Those words leave the young Duke confused, and knowing how absurd the story is, the lieutenant confirms again that, incredibly, it is all true. He looks at the clock and comments that he saw the woman that morning at the exam site. And at that moment, she must be finishing the second round. Soon the prince asks for Elaine's enlistment papers, and the subordinate hands them over. Thus, Reese carefully examines the document, until suddenly he begins to laugh, and Lowell is startled by the reaction. Finishing his analysis of the paper, the Duke asks if there is anything else to report, and the lieutenant answers that that is all. Then he dismisses the subordinate afterward. He takes another look at the admission record and sees Elaine's name written on it. Reflective, he thinks it has been a long time since he heard that name. After that, we return to the protagonist, who is having a snack after the first tests. She tells herself that Reese was not at the preliminaries nor in the second stages, and imagines he will probably not appear until the final stage. Then a blonde boy approaches and asks if the seat beside Elaine is taken. Our protagonist answers that it is not, and the young man thanks her. Sitting down, the boy explains that he looked for a place to sit, but everything is full. But Elaine's blue bracelet catches his attention, and he asks if she is taking the tests for the Knights of Filres, and the swordswoman confirms it. Happy, the young man says he is too. However, in the background, a voice exclaims that he punched someone in the face. We soon discover it is a group of men talking, and the oldest, called Lord McGaff, is telling the story of the fight he had, while the others cheer laughing. He claims this test is easier than a child's game. However, the blonde boy dislikes this and says the man is rude for acting as if the place belonged to him. Showing his Knight Order bracelet, the loudmouth says this is proof he passed the organization's morning tests. This makes one of the boys praise McGaff, saying the accessory suits him very well. However, another boy comments that the woman beside them also has a similar bracelet. With that, the Lord becomes irritated and refuses to believe the protagonist passed the test because she is very skinny, considering she must have stolen the bracelet. The pair agrees with their partner's statement, though deep down they know McGaff has a huge inferiority complex. Irritated, the blonde tells Elaine not to listen to those idiots, and the swordswoman is only thinking that these people talk too much while they eat. Then the candidate says that group is just a bunch of fools who do not know that size does not mean skill. Elaine, calmer than anyone else there, replies that honestly she does not care about any of that. Thus, annoyed, the loudmouth bangs the table, asking if they are kidding him. McGaff says the Knights of Filres are lowering themselves by accepting that kind of people nowadays. He confesses he is only there for the money, but he did not expect to be joining a bunch of fools instead of decent knights. And with a wicked look, he ironically asks what more he could expect from the cursed son of a witch, leaving the protagonist very irritated. Then the man turns to his companions and asks if they know what he means, and they say, of course they do. Trying to hold back her anger, Elaine then hears one of the flatterers say, Reese probably only got that title through magic, voodoo, or something like that. To make things worse, McGaff says it is true since that is the only way a spoiled brat could become a duke so quickly. He concludes that worms like him should be dead. However, before he finishes the sentence, the protagonist appears behind him and orders him to take back what he said. Startled, the Lord turns around and does not understand what just happened. Elaine remains firm and serious, repeating again for the loudmouth to take back what he said. Standing up with the intention of intimidating, the jerk asks if the protagonist is trying to give him orders. "Say whatever you want about me, but do not you dare speak ill of the Duke," Elaine replies with a furious gaze. The man insults her, calling her a fool and smiling sarcastically. Then he asks if the protagonist is on the side of the witch's brat. With that, a great murmur begins, and the swordswoman can feel the hatred and contempt in the eyes of those present. She immediately wonders what Reese did wrong for them to treat him like that. Thus, we return for a moment to the knight's test registration tent, and Elaine sighs in relief for having finished everything she needed to do. However, almost at the same time, a couple walks by her and the girl comments that the Knights of Filries are despicable and asks who would want to serve the son of a witch. The boy says the girl is being a bit harsh, for Reese may really be the son of a witch, but he is also the Duke of Killiard and does a lot of good for the place. However, the blonde interrupts him, asking what the hell the young man knows about any of this. And she continues, completely enraged, saying that her grandparents were killed by the witch and that the same witch burned her hometown in a single night. With deep resentment, she says that the blood of a murderer runs in the Duke's veins and that he is playing at being a savior, but no one knows what he will do next. Hearing all of this, her heart full of pain, Elaine realizes how much Reese suffered just for being Bella's son during these last 20 years. Then we return to the present, and the blonde rebuts the bully, saying he should be ashamed because if he used the time he spends insulting others to examine himself, he would understand that he is nothing but ignorant trash. So McGaff reaches the peak of his irritation and asks what the hell the boy just said. Grabbing a knife, he lunges at the aspiring knight and yells that he will finish him off. However, at that exact moment, Elaine holds the aggressor's hand and asks the hothead to calm down a bit. The protagonist says that the man is clearly insane because he is using a knife in the middle of this entire crowd. Surprised, McGaff looks back and wonders why the woman is so strong, but he keeps cursing both of them and says they will regret this, and asks if they know who they are messing with. Then he furiously exclaims that he is the great McGaff of Aleda. Yet, to the man's utter indignation, a deep silence falls over the place. Looking at him, the protagonist questions what that is supposed to mean. McGaff becomes even angrier because of Elaine's response. Around them, people murmur, saying they have never heard that name and are feeling secondhand embarrassment. Hearing the whispers, the scoundrel asks, full of rage, how the swordswoman dares to ridicule him like that and moves to attack, but the protagonist dodges easily. Then she herself lands a punch in the opponent's stomach, making him instantly dizzy. The man falls to his knees, and Elaine orders him to get lost if he doesn't want to get hit again. With that, the blonde applauds and says that was amazing. He is impressed because she defeated a man twice her size with a single blow. Thus he extends his hand, introduces himself as Cezanne, and says he is happy to meet someone so talented and hopes that they both pass the test. Elaine smiles kindly and replies that she hopes the same. Soon we see that the swordswoman defeated several monsters and passed the third test. Then a knight announces the end of the third stage and tells those who defeated all the creatures to gather. Cezanne, at the protagonist's side, whispers that he knew she would pass the test. She thanks him and is also happy that he passed. However, the warrior thinks she hasn't seen Reese anywhere and imagines he will not come. After that, Lowell appears and orders them to listen carefully to what he is going to say, because he will explain the rules before they go to the final test. He instructs that the candidates will be chosen at random to enter the circle and duel against an examiner, and their task is to endure 1 minute of combat stepping outside the circle. Stepping on the border of the circle or being unable to continue will result in immediate disqualification. Then the lieutenant asks if anyone has questions, and Elaine raises her hand. She asks if the Duke will be their opponent. Before Lowell can answer, another person arrives and calls out to the soldier. This man asks if all the candidates are present. Our protagonist looks carefully at the individual and wonders if he is Reese. She quickly receives the answer when the Duke of Killiard introduces himself and says he will be the final opponent. Finally finding the one she wants to protect, Elaine cannot contain her emotion upon seeing how the prince has grown. Thus, Lowell replies that everyone who passed the tests is there. Then the Duke turns to the candidates and says he will evaluate who is qualified to serve under his command. Therefore, he asks that no one hold back when they fight against him, and he asks if he is clear. They all respond in unison that they understand. Then the lieutenant calls Heather Tage to be the first to be examined, and he instructs the others to wait their turn in the waiting area. Nervous, the first candidate approaches the Duke and introduces himself. The others watch apprehensively, and the fight soon begins with Heather charging at the commander. But with a simple movement, Reese disarms the young man and defeats him easily. This makes everyone watching the duel surprised. Thus, Reese calls for the next opponent. One by one, they are defeated by the Duke without causing him the slightest harm. Cezanne comments that if things continue like this, no one will pass, and that the examiner is stronger than he imagined. Soon, another falls, and Lowell says the next to enter the circle will be Miss Elaine. Our protagonist agrees and heads into the duel, standing face to face with Reese. The prince observes her and knows this is the woman who crossed the mountains to get there, the famous Elaine. They position themselves and launch into battle intensely. However, we shift to the protagonist's memories and see the young prince falling after trying to duel. Smiling, Elaine says she told him he was too young for that, but the boy insists he can do it and wants to try again. But the protagonist asks why he doesn't wait until he gets a little older, since he is only 3 years old. Yet Reese pouts and says he wants to be like Elaine now. The swordswoman's heart melts, and she decides she will teach him on one condition. She says the prince must promise that he will never push himself further than he can handle, because if he promises, the warrior will train him until he becomes a master swordsman. Then the two interlock their pinkies and seal the promise. Thus we return to the present, and Reese remains serious in the duel. Elaine is thoughtful, because she did not manage to fulfill the promise, but the prince managed to become a master swordsman anyway. However, the fight remains intense, and the protagonist's sword begins to slightly crack, worrying her. In a clash of strength, the Duke comments that Elaine seems to be more than just another weak commoner. Then the prince pushes her back and unleashes a series of attacks, making the protagonist feel pressured, because she does not know whether her sword will last another 20 seconds. With that, Reese says he is surprised she managed to withstand so many attacks with such a fragile weapon, and that her downfall will be because she failed to equip herself properly. In just a few seconds, the sword actually breaks in half, and the prince's weapon is only a few centimeters away from finishing Elaine off completely, making Cezanne and the crowd worried. But Elaine is Elaine, and she manages to block the strike with a blade made of energy. Reese finally loses his stoic expression and wonders if the duelist can use that kind of ability. Lowering his blade, he notes that the protagonist is not an ordinary woman and congratulates her for not being completely without skill. Thus, the candidate Elaine passes the test. Our protagonist asks if she really passed, and the Duke confirms it. A big smile soon forms on the protagonist's face, and she thanks him deeply, bowing to the Duke internally. She is very excited because she managed to pass. Observing her, the prince remains thoughtful and thinks about the swordswoman's name. Time passes, and the trumpets sound in the great royal hall of Killiard. The knighthood ceremony is about to begin, and the two of them finally manage to reach the end of all this. Then they are ordered to approach one by one, starting from the left. Thus, Elaine comes very close to the throne and kneels before the prince. She looks tenderly at Reese, and he places the blade on her shoulder. The Duke says that she must devote her whole heart to Killiard, and in return, they will honor Elaine's noble oath, lighting her path in the darkness and showing her the path of light. Then he asks if the protagonist swears eternal loyalty to him. Internally, the swordswoman already swore this a long time ago, deciding that she will protect Reese until the end of time, because she owes that to Bella. She then remembers when the witch asked her to take care of her son, but Elaine knows she must not tell the Duke that, because she thinks he will be devastated when he learns that Bella's heart beats inside her chest. Standing before him, she decides that the prince must never discover the truth, because he is the one that Bella and she loved most in this world, and she will use this second chance to make Reese as happy and safe as possible. With that, determined, she fervently exclaims that she swears eternal loyalty. The scene cuts, and we go to the castle where many people are talking. In the middle of the crowd, Cezanne asks if all those people are also knights like them, and Elaine also finds it impressive. Then the lieutenant appears and asks for everyone's attention. He says that now that they are gathered, the welcoming ceremony will begin, and it will start with a few introductions. He introduces himself as Lowell Royard, Vice Commander of the Knights of Filres, and Lieutenant of Duke Reese of Felon next. He introduces Hillier Reister, also Vice Commander of the Order. Observing everything, our duo applauds happily. After that, Lowell says he will give an overview of the work they will have to carry out. He then explains that the primary responsibility of the Knights is the eradication of monsters. The missions will be selected according to difficulty and the Knights' personal abilities, and they will also have to keep other territories safe beyond Killiard if their services are requested. Thus, the Vice Commander concludes that they will learn the rest as they begin their lives in the Order. Soon he announces that he has a special message from the Duke, and the protagonist pays close attention. Lowell explains that for a long time, the position of the Duke's personal guard has remained vacant, so His Grace offered the chance for one of them to volunteer for the position. Then he asks if anyone is interested, but a huge silence fills the room. Sighing in disappointment, the lieutenant already knew no one would accept, so he says he understands and will move on to the next topic. But someone in the middle of the crowd raises a hand and volunteers for the post. Impressed? The vice commander asks who said that, and of course it was our protagonist, who answers that she volunteers to be part of His Grace's personal guard. A few seconds later, gossip begins to spread among the others, calling Elaine crazy and other similar things. The swordswoman doesn't understand why everyone is acting that way. She wonders if none of them have even the slightest respect for their own commander and finds it unbelievable. Watching her, a brown-haired woman wonders if that is the infamous Elaine Time Passes. And Cezanne asks what the protagonist had in mind to think about volunteering, and continues asking if she knows what it means to become the Duke's personal guard. Irritated, the swordswoman retorts that she knows. It means she must do her best as a knight to protect her commander. And she asks if there is anything wrong with that. Cezanne tries to explain himself, but the woman from earlier appears, saying she finally found who she was looking for. Thus, both turn to her with a suspicious look. Then the woman asks if by any chance the young man is Cezanne Weston. The blonde youth answers that he is and asks who she is. The woman then introduces herself as Sophia Razulis, says it is a pleasure to meet him, and that she has been a knight for a year. She asks if the rumor she heard about him sponsoring the Marquis Lakers is true. Suspicious of the woman, he comments that he thought she was a recruit like them, and wonders why she is ignoring Elaine Sophia, then asks what the two of them are doing alone in such a secluded place, and already jumps to the wrong conclusion. Cezanne says it's nothing like that, and Elaine turns her back to the woman and leaves. Weston tries to stop her, but the protagonist says she needs to go because the vice commander said he wanted to see her. And while Cezanne seems worried about his friend, Sophia simply watches with a serious expression. Sometime later, Elaine walks through the castle corridors and notices that it is snowing outside. Sighing, the protagonist happily comments that this is the first snow she has seen in 20 years, until a black horse comes toward her in the snow, and she cannot understand why the animal is wandering in such an unusual place. She approaches him and pets him tenderly. She then asks the horse what he is doing there and where his master is. Soon someone arrives and says that the animal's name is Nyx. That person is Rhys himself, who admits to being impressed because normally the mayor does not let anyone get close except him. The Duke's sudden arrival startles Elaine a little, and she greets her commander. While petting Nyx, the prince asks if she is Lady Elaine, and the protagonist confirms it. Rhys says he heard she volunteered to be his personal guard, and that what he is about to say may sound strange, since he asked for volunteers for the position. But he suggests that Elaine reconsider her decision. As expected, our protagonist apologizes and responds that she will not follow that suggestion. Thus, the Duke explains that every bodyguard he has ever had was killed soon after taking the post while trying to protect him from those who want him dead. That is why he sees no reason it would be different with her. So he says that if she is doing this out of a misguided sense of honor, he suggests she give up while she still can. Hearing Rhys's reasons, the protagonist is shocked that her beloved's life is in constant danger, and she thinks that the Knights of Filris are made up of the strongest in the country. Holding her sword, Elaine says she knows nothing about his former guards, but promises she will not die. Smirking ironically, Rhys asks what makes her so sure of that. The protagonist replies that he saw her strength when they dueled. Approaching him, she says she is someone very hard to kill. With that, the Duke is taken aback by the swordswoman, and he allows Elaine to become his personal guard. This makes the protagonist very happy, and she thanks him greatly, promising to do her best. Confused, the prince asks why Elaine is so happy about a position where she can easily be killed. Elaine replies that now she will be able to protect him at all times, 24 hours a day. Pulling on the mayor's reins, the commander says that the protagonist is quite strange, but in any case, he instructs her to go to his office tomorrow to begin her duties. Happily, the warrior says she understands perfectly. The prince then begins to gallop away and wishes a good night to his new bodyguard. Thus, he leaves. And as she says goodbye, Elaine thinks that now Rhys will not have to endure all the horrible things he goes through alone, and she promises that she will never leave the Duke's side. In the middle of the snow, the prince grows curious about what the protagonist said about protecting him 24 hours a day, affirming once again that she is certainly a very strange woman. The day passes, and Elaine's first day as Rhys's personal guard finally arrives, and now she will be able to stay with him all the time. She wants to see him as soon as possible. However, she finds it strange that the vice commander's office door is open. Trying to take a peek, she hears someone shouting indignantly, saying they cannot understand. Getting a little closer, the protagonist notices that this voice is familiar. Blatantly observing the room, the swordswoman wonders if the vice commander called someone into his office because it seems like they are arguing inside. This woman is a gossip, huh? Inside the room, we see Lowell telling someone that he understands why she is angry. but there is nothing he can do about it. Soon, we discover that the person the lieutenant is talking to is none other than Sophia. Irritated, she asks why they will not let her become his Grace's personal guard, because when she tried, the Duke said that a bodyguard would only get in his way. But now he is accepting Elaine for the same position without saying anything. She questions what the protagonist has that she does not. With that, she complains that the truth is that the Duke has nothing against having a personal guard, but he simply does not want it to be her. Thus, she leaves the room furious while Lowell tries to call her back and calm the situation. Sophia slams the door hard, and her eyes meet Elaine's full of anger. The young woman purposely bumps into Elaine. Then the lieutenant also appears and apologizes because the protagonist had to see that situation, and taking advantage of the moment, the warrior asks what just happened. Still a little embarrassed, the vice commander says they need to go to the Duke's office and he will explain what happened on the way. Then, walking through the corridors, Lowell apologizes for Lady Sophia's rude behavior. He asks if the swordswoman is okay because he saw the other woman shove her pretty hard a few minutes ago. Elaine replies that it was not that bad and she is fine. Our protagonist says she did not know Sophia had also volunteered to be the prince's personal guard, and the lieutenant explains that she wanted the position a year ago, right after joining the Knights. However, Rhys vehemently refused to accept her in that position, which made Lady Sophia eventually give up insisting. Therefore, he tells Elaine to imagine how surprised Sophia must have been this year with the Duke accepting the protagonist for the position without even hesitating, so of course she is this angry. Hearing this, the swordswoman wonders if someone else is trying to protect Rhys and becomes very happy. Then, after quite a bit of conversation, they arrive at the Duke's office. The pair stands right in front of His Grace's study. Knocking on the door, Lowell calls Rhys, saying that he brought Lady Elaine. However, no one answers, and they hear nothing but silence. Soon, the lieutenant decides to open the door and warns the commander that he is coming in. But as expected, the room is empty. Lowell figures that maybe he is at the training grounds and says that the commander goes there in the mornings to practice with his sword sometimes. And he continues saying that he is probably finishing up and that he will go fetch him. And the protagonist replies that she will wait right there. Our protagonist then uses this opportunity to take a look around Rhys's room, until that long red sword ends up catching Elaine's attention. She wonders what it is and notices that the object looks very familiar. However, a few seconds later, something clicks in her memory, and she seems to remember what it is. We go to the past and see the blacksmith asking if Elaine wants him to engrave Rhys's initials on the sword. The protagonist says yes, because it will give it a personal and special touch. The blacksmith says there is no problem and asks where she wants him to place the initials. Thus, Elaine touches the spot where she wants the initials to be inscribed. We return to the present and see that the work was indeed done. There are the initials, Rhys de Filon. Seeing this, Elaine is certain that this is the sword she ordered to be made for the prince's birthday. She remembers that this was the gift the little boy had asked her for, and that she had said she would not give him the present at that moment, but that he should wait a little bit. Emotional, Elaine wonders how Rhys has this, because when the sword was finished, Sebeka had already been destroyed. Suddenly, at that very moment, the Duke appears behind the protagonist and asks what she is doing. Our Elaine looks back, a bit startled, and that's it for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the story. What are you all thinking so far? I don't know about you, but I lost my breath when Sophia found Elaine at the door. And do you think the Duke was really angry or just pretending? I want to know your guesses. And if you want more, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss any new videos I post. This work is called Reasons to Protect the Witch's Son and our recap, covered up to chapter 15. Kisses and see you next time.